Welcome to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we trade in personal finance advice for entertaining conversations about money, millennials, and the young at heart. Welcome world to another episode of Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm, where we try to have fun, entertaining, and sometimes comedic conversations about money. Malcolm, Ethridge, my wonderful co-host, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good, man. I'm in a good mood. DC Sports is actually doing something these days, you know.
That they are.
The Nats killing people. I'm a little excited. Okay. I don't know if you know this about me, but the Nats are actually the only DC Sports team that I claim. So really? I'm excited that they are actually making some noise.
Interesting. I in the sports world, I'm excited about this basketball season.
Okay.
I'm not as into football as I used to be for various reasons. So basketball has taken over, basketball and soccer, and I'm excited to see LeBron and AD and that whole thing.
I feel weird seeing LeBron in a Lakers uniform.
Really, still?
Like it's also the part of me that like, I don't want to tell people I'm a Lakers fan for them to assume that it's because of LeBron James. Right?
Oh, yeah, no.
Like, I've been a Lakers fan because of Shaq.
Yeah.
My whole adult life and also like as a kid. Mm-hmm. But just the fact that wherever LeBron goes, so does like 50% of America. So I just don't want to be lumped into that category by people who are like, oh, this dude clearly like.
Listen, I got my membership stamp back in '96.
Well, you're from LA though.
That's
so
true.
People will assume that you're, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, but back when Kobe had an afro and came along was cool, but when Shaq left Orlando for LA, I was like, then I'm a Lakers fan.
That's funny. Unrelated note in life, before we get to today's topic at hand, my sister and her boyfriend were recently in town for the triplets' birthday party, and they're like real true millennials.
Okay.
Like we're those old millennials, and I realize
I prefer the term elder statesmen.
Elder statesmen, okay, elder statesmen of the group. They're true millennials because they were, at some point we were just talking about whatever, and they talked about how after like some Uber controversy, they deleted the app and hadn't like reinstalled it after. And I was like, oh, y'all are like legit, like, you know.
I haven't either.
What?
I guess I'm more millennial than I thought. I haven't Ubered in over 2 years.
But you have a car though.
Okay, that's true. I take Lyft. No, but like I
so you consciously so you're
I'm
one of them too.
I'm a conscientious objector. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I felt like until
when Travis Kalanick came out and like vehemently said Donald Trump is my boy, I was like, see, like it's one thing to be like, I'm a businessman and I do business with everybody.
Right.
Which is basically the stance Tim Cook, Jeff Bezos, people like that tried to take.
Right.
Whether they believe it or not, up to them.
Right.
But the fact that Travis Kalanick came out and said, no, this is my boy, and I support what he supports. I was just like, this dude is like flagrantly an idiot. So I don't want anything to do with him or his platform. I will say though, if there wasn't a option other than Uber,
right,
I would be left to function with, maybe I drive my car a little bit more, but Uber's my only option. So I'm fortunate that it was a little easier to make that protest, quote unquote.
And I thought that was interesting. And similar for them, it's been like over a year, 2 years or whatever, like a long period of time where they like made the decision and didn't go back on it. So anyway, that's that. But today's conversation at hand on this episode is hot money fall headlines. We're going to be talking about some news that's in the space. But before we get into that, as we always do, it is now time for headlines. Black household income is rising across the United States. This is an October 2019 piece on Brookings.edu by Alan Baroob. Last week's headlines around the release of new Census Bureau data spotlighted a continued rise in income inequality. The Gini Index, a statistical measure of income inequality, rose to its highest recorded level in 50 years, signaling that the distribution of income in the United States is the most uneven it's been since the Bureau began tracking it in 1967. That disturbing trend, however, masked the economic progress Black households have made in recent years. In 2018, their median household income, the level at which half of the households have higher incomes and half have lower, reached $41,500. While that level slightly exceeded that and was statistically unchanged from 2017, it continued to top 2007's pre-recession peak for Black median household income. of $41,100. So it went from 41.1 to 41.5. Malcolm, is this welcome news? let the resident skeptic begin. Go ahead, sir.
I'm torn, honestly. Okay. Like at first, I started reading, and like you said, incomes keep rising. I was like, keep on, like, you know, I got excited. Give it all you got. I was like, cool. But as the resident skeptic, you know, I had to keep reading, and then actually, like, the air kind of came out of the balloon a little bit, because I said, this is all about income.
Right.
It has nothing to do with wealth.
Right.
And wealth has a lot more to do with how much you keep, not how much you make.
Right.
And so I know the statistics that also say at the same time this income we're talking about is going up, we're supposed to be seeing black household net worth reach a negative number in the next like 5 years. So it's like, okay, my income has gone up, great for consumption,
right,
but what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things if I'm not investing it or saving it in any meaningful way or putting it into anything that's gonna be there tomorrow? So it's tough to get all the way excited, but I will say this is definitely a step in the right direction, because if you don't make any money, you can't save any money, right?
Indeed, indeed. Equally promising was the geographically widespread increases in incomes black households experienced. Of the 50 metropolitan areas with the largest black populations, 18 registered a statistically significant increase in median income for those households between 2013 and 2018. Metro areas in the West and the South recorded the largest statistically significant increase in black median household income. San Francisco and Seattle topped the list, with their typical black households earning at least 30% more in 2018 than 2013.
Now that means something in San Francisco.
It does, and in Seattle as well.
That means something.
Absolutely. Phoenix, Riverside, California, Tampa, Florida, Orlando, Florida were among the Sun Belt metro areas where black households experienced large income gains across the 5-year period. Meanwhile, the 5 metropolitan areas with the largest black populations, New York, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and Washington, D.C. also saw black median household incomes increase significantly from rates of 7% in greater D.C. to 21% in greater Atlanta, which that feels like a huge number. As the housing crisis intensifies in booming coastal cities, these co-living spaces are, oh shoot, that's from another show. Malcolm, how is this happening? How or why is this happening? I want to explain real quick. And that was also in the piece. What accounts for this progress in black incomes? One likely factor is increased employment opportunity. The share of the prime age 25 to 54-year-olds, black adults in jobs increased significantly in 38 of the 50 metro areas from 2013 to 2018. In the metro areas with the largest increases in black median household incomes, employment rates for black adults rose anywhere from 5.6% points, which was in Riverside, to an astonishing 12.7 percentage points in San Francisco during that period, Malcolm.
So let me walk you back for 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
So you said a few things, but one was that it's 50 major metropolitan areas where all of these black people live, where these increased incomes are happening, right? And I have to assume that most of these 50 cities are the ones that James Brown was shouting out made in America for the Rocky movie a long time ago. But that has nothing to do necessarily with this.
Okay.
As you were listing the cities, I was singing it in my head. I was like, Detroit, Nashville, like in my head. So anyway.
That's not nearly as good as your Bernie Sanders impression, but go on.
But anyway, so what that means then is all of these places where people are moving to, there has to be some sort of job creation happening in those places that pays a meaningful enough wage to make you move your feet and move your family and everything else along the way. So I think a deeper dive into what those businesses are that exist in those places that are attracting these people to those 50 cities would tell that story a lot better than we're able to with just this one data set.
Right. How do we understand income, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, against the ability to create, keep, and generate wealth? Like, how do we balance those two things? Obviously, income is tied to it, but what do you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, in America, the number one source of wealth creation is home ownership.
Right.
So quite simply, if the people we're talking about with these higher incomes are putting that money into acquiring property, then their wealth and net worth will increase over time the same way.
Right.
Because you're not going to say, most people are not going to say, my income has doubled basically from 10 years ago, And what that means is I'm going to sit all that money in cash,
Right.
and it just accumulates that way.
Right.
You're either going to spend it or you're going to invest it in something.
Right.
So if you're now investing it in a home or rental property or some sort of real estate project or whatever, then you own property that allows you to create that wealth a little faster.
Right.
That has to also be happening simultaneously in order for you to hold on to that money, versus it just came and it went.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
what isn't included in that statistic is that black people are 13% of the US population roughly, but also like 39% of consumption. So, great that these higher incomes are coming and folks are experiencing higher standards of living, but then also like, what are you doing with that money for tomorrow?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that was the headline for this episode. I remind you can always catch past episodes of our show on Apple Podcast, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. And please leave us a rating and a review on any of those platforms. That helps more people catch the show. Also, if you have a question for us or a topic you want us to cover, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And of course, you can always catch us on social media. My handle's @MYDM1. Malcolm, what's yours?
@MalcolmOnMoney.
And that's on Instagram and Twitter. And of course, you can always catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. This is MYDM with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. Welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money with Ben and Malcolm. Where on this episode's conversation at hand is hot fall money headlines. One of the best ways to stay on track with your personal finances is to keep up with money news so you're aware of industry changes and trends. Not being aware of a change in the tax code or an adjustment in account contribution limits when you start making more money can be costly. That's why on MYDM we feel it's important to occasionally peruse the news to keep you up to date on what's trending in the world of money. On this episode, we are covering hot fall money headlines, Malcolm. So some examples of like headlines that kind of can affect your personal finances. Just a quick list. The first thing I thought about was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Yeah.
Because that had like a major impact on people's like personal tax rate.
And we're still sorting it out.
We're still sorting it out, indeed. Another one for me that happened specifically was when I can't remember when it was, but there was a point at which like I started working full time again, and I was making contributions to my Roth IRA, and then found out when I was doing my taxes that like I had contributed too much, and I was supposed to take some out, and I'm supposed to get penalized for whatever I over contributed.
One of those.
And so like I was like, well, dang, I didn't even know that a Roth IRA was supposed to be like income limit based. So that's another example. And another one of recent news that we talked about on this show, online trading fees moving to zero.
those kind of go hand in hand because, like a lot of times folks are like establishing Roth IRAs to buy stocks that they're interested in.
Right.
I'm going to walk you back for 2 seconds just to throw out there. There is such a thing as rothira.com, which has like a cult following.
Okay.
And there's so much good information up there. Like I even myself, like if somebody asks me a question and I'm kind of like, what? Like that's so left field. I just go to rothira.com and like we'll find the information for them.
I'll consider checking that out when I have some free time, or maybe I
never, because you're never gonna have free time. But okay, but then anyway, so to move it forward, your point about the free trades and online brokerage accounts, I think that's gonna be like a significant cultural generational shift that we haven't really caught up with yet to understand exactly how much of a difference that's going to make.
Okay. Excellent. Well, the first piece of news that we pulled for this show, this credit card will let you earn rewards to pay off your student loans, but is it a good deal? This was an October 2019 piece on MarketWatch.com by Jacob Passy. Student loan giant Sallie Mae is now offering 3 credit cards designed for the collegiate set, including one that lets people use their cashback rewards to pay off student loans. The 3 credit cards, the Sallie Mae Ignite, Sallie Mae Accelerate, and Sallie Mae Evolve, are all structured similarly. Each has a base rate for cashback rewards and then an extra 25% bonus on rewards if users fulfill certain requirements. The first card offers 1.25% back on all purchases, but people can get an extra 25% bonus on rewards if the rewards are used to pay down federal or private student loans. That's an interesting concept, Malcolm. You got a smirk on your face.
I'm just sitting here thinking about Sneaky Sally. Like, Sneaky Sally.
Hold on. So that's the first card. The second card, which is intended to help college students build credit, pays 1% cash back on all purchases. Cardholders can then unlock a 25% bonus on rewards earned on all future purchases if they make 6 consecutive months of on-time payments. And then the third card offers 1.25% back on all purchases, but users will receive the 25% bonus on rewards earned for purchases made in their top 2 spending categories each business cycle automatically. The cards have no annual fees, but do charge fees for late payments and foreign transactions. Each card has a 0% annual percentage rate period for 6 months. And then 12 months, depending upon the card, and the interest rates then move on a variable rate between 14.99 and 24.99%, Malcolm. So what do you think of a credit card built around using the rewards to pay down student loan debt? Like, I don't know how to feel. It was kind of funny to me, but what are your thoughts?
Please don't fall into the trap. Anybody who's watching this, listening to this, that can hear my voice, please do not fall into the trap.
Okay, tell us why.
Well, first of all, you have to assume anything that's being offered by Sallie Mae is not for your benefit.
At all,
ever. Even the student loan that you took out was not for your benefit so much as it was for the benefit of Sallie Mae and the government enterprise behind it.
Right.
But with that said, specifically about the credit card, so here's what I figured out as I was reading through this, and again, antenna went up and like my skepticism kicked in.
Right.
That means that Sallie Mae now has all of the data they need to determine whether you should have been able to afford to make your payments, that you are now calling them asking for forbearance or some sort of income adjusted payment plan down the road when you get behind a little bit. Because you're using their credit card. They have access to all of your purchase history now. So now Sallie Mae has the ability to say within 30 seconds, denied, because I saw you went and bought some Jordans for $280, you could have paid $280 on the principal of your student loans, young man. So denied.
You really in the matrix looking at the ones and the zeros right now.
I'm always looking for the gotcha, and that, my friend, is a gotcha.
Man, I would have to agree on that.
I will say the one encouraging thing about that is that it clearly shows that the federal government outside of the NSA has finally caught up to and realizes the value of big data.
Okay.
That's the only positive in there that I could glean whatsoever.
Right. Another thought that I had though, if you're if your users, it's like to make a benefit from these kinds of cards to get like cash back and rewards back, you have to have a high and frequent usage, right? Because like if you don't use it, then you're not going to get any rewards. So it like encourages you to do what it encourages you to do is to use your card, right?
Now they've got you using them as your primary swipe.
Absolutely. But then it's almost like unless you're paying that off monthly and a person who is applying for this card maybe doesn't fit that profile, you're almost negating the benefit of that, extra 25% towards your loan. It's almost like a marketing tool that ends up not doing what it's supposed to do anyway.
I thought you were going somewhere else that you didn't quite go.
Okay, where was that?
If you don't pay your balance off in full at the end of the month, what happens? You have to pay interest on the amount that's remaining outstanding.
Right.
So now I got to pay Sally on the left and on the right.
Absolutely.
So Sneaky Sally has figured out a
Sally.
way since, okay, fine, you want to challenge me and ask for a lower interest rate because you don't make X amount of money. And so, okay, that's fine.
Right.
But let me put this credit card in your hands that has a 28.9% APR. And I'm going to give you a $50,000 credit limit and let you go hurt yourself.
That's hilarious.
So now you have a balance you can't pay off on the credit card and a balance you can't pay off on the student loan side. And I own you, not only you, your kids and your kids' kids at that point, because you're indebted to me forever.
I think people will approve of your utilizing the Donald Trump method of giving a nickname to Sally Mae.
Sneaky Sally?
Sneaky Sally.
That's a good point. If I were running a campaign against her, Sneaky Sally would be
Indeed. So what are the best rules, though, to follow when selecting credit cards and other extensions of credit generally?
Really is just knowing whether or not you are a person who is going to pay off that balance on a regular enough basis.
And be able to.
Like those points are exciting and they're enticing and they're interesting. But for one, like I was looking at one specifically recently that has like a $600 annual fee.
Oh.
And I was actually trying to like negotiate in my mind all of the things that they offer you that could wipe out that $600 fee to still make it worth my while.
Right.
I got stuck with like $140 that I couldn't quite compute where I was going to come up with it, which meant that I had to pay $140 to carry their credit card.
Right.
But there's so many other cards that will not charge you a fee at all and still give you 2% cash back on whatever, like that whole thing. So like it's great because they have the sign up bonuses, 100,000 points, 80,000 airline miles, whatever. But if you know you're a person who's not going to actually pay that thing off at the end of the month, or you're not actually going to use all the benefits that come along with it to make that annual fee worth it, then you might as well just keep on using your debit card.
Another crazy thing to me is, because I have the same two credit cards, one that I opened when I think when I was 18, and then another one that was like not too long after that. I don't know what the interest rate is on the first one because I don't use that one. I just keep it open to like keep the credit history going. But my second credit card, which is my primary personal credit card that I use, the interest rate is like 9%. And I see interest rates now and I'm like, what? Now keep in mind, I got mine like when I was still basically a kid.
Yeah.
So like I was getting an interest rate that was current for that period in time. But I look at the interest rates now, 14, 16, into the 30s. I'm like, there's no point.
Well, something also happened in the time between then when you were 18 in the early 2000s and now. Well, really in 2009. In 2009, there was a piece of legislation passed. I don't even remember what it was called, but a piece of legislation that was passed that took away the caps on interest rates that credit card companies could charge.
Wow.
So once upon a time, they had to act reasonably and they could only charge you like 8%, 9%. 9-10% was on the high end.
Right, at
like
that time.
That was considered a risky bet.
Right.
And now, like literally 28.9 is what I've seen in the
normal.
prospectus on the credit card that I was talking about that I was considering.
It's ridiculous.
And they can charge that and then some if they want to, because there aren't any caps on what you can actually charge in interest anymore.
Needless to say, I haven't opened any credit cards that at least function as a daily usage ones in a long time. Another piece of news that came out recently, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg sympathizes with your friend Malcolm Bernie Sanders take on billionaires and says no one deserves to have that much money. This was an October 2019 piece on CNBC by Salvador Rodriguez. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg made the surprising call to live stream an employee Q&A session to the public on Thursday after recordings from a similar meeting in July were leaked and published earlier in the week. Asked to respond to Senator Sanders or Bernie Sanders' comments that billionaires should not exist, Zuckerberg offered an unexpected viewpoint considering his Facebook ownership makes him worth over $69 billion. He said, "I understand where he's coming from. I don't know that I have an exact threshold on what amount of money someone should have, but on some level, no one deserves to have that much money." Malcolm, did you hear about this little quote?
Oh, it blew up CNBC. And I don't completely agree with it.
Okay, interesting.
Interestingly enough.
Okay.
Like, I don't completely agree with the part where he said no one deserves to have all of that money. So if I put myself in the shoes of the oil tycoon or somebody like that just you struck gold on accident and you just so happen to be the first one in Texas to hit that geyser or whatever, and you became
Jerry Jones,
$10 million, Jerry Jones or T. Boone Pickens or somebody like that. Like, if you became that oil tycoon and you were just so lucky to be there first, then good for you. Like, okay. But if I'm thinking about the opposite, which is like this dude who built this company that owns nothing from scratch with a laptop in his dorm room, and it's worth, hundreds of billions of dollars, I kind of feel like you deserve to be that rich. Like, if I look at Mark Zuckerberg versus some of the other people I was talking about that accidentally became wealthy, I kind of feel like he deserves it. Now, don't get me wrong. Facebook gets a little out of control with the practices they use to create some of that income for the company. But when I look at like what he's done in the way that like he created something that now people can't even live without, kind of like Steve Jobs with Apple. Like, I kind of feel like you deserve it.
I think I land somewhere in the middle. I don't know that I feel strongly either way. I think, obviously within this capitalist place we call America, there's a place for reward and your hard work that you put into it. It's just I think the notion of not having billionaires is more about maybe things shouldn't be so concentrated as this. I think I read a story that said like the top some percent of wealthy people now own like close to half of the wealth in the world, which that doesn't sound like a place that's even close to fair or having a fair shot at moving to the next level. And in my mind, it's more focused on that rather than the specific income or wealth of a particular person.
See, I don't worry about the fairness of you having the money. I worry about the fairness of the things you did along the way to accumulate the money.
I see.
So Facebook being allowed to just run roughshod over us and use our data against us, to sway elections and stuff.
That's an issue.
To me, that's an issue. Or billionaires being able to basically write lines in the tax code themselves because they can afford to pay lobbyists to fight Mitch McConnell and folks like that to make it so. I have a problem with that. But I don't necessarily have a problem with the fact that like you have that
the
much
money itself. It's the effect of it. Absolutely. We're going to take another quick music break, but before we do, I want to remind you can always catch past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Of course, please leave us a review on any of those platforms. It helps more people catch the show. If you have a question or a topic you want us to cover, send it to us, info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And also, you can follow us on social media. My handle's @MYDM1. Malcolm, what's yours?
@MalcolmOnMoney.
And that's, of course, on Twitter and on Instagram. You can always catch us on Mark Zuckerberg Billionaires Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. This is MYDM with Ben and Malcolm. We will be right back. welcome back to Manage Your Damn Money, where on this show we are talking about hot fall money headlines that you should be following or be aware of. The next one that we pulled is 10 expensive cities where salaries are rising faster than housing costs. This was a May 2019 piece on CNBC by Sean M. Carter. Wages in the United States have been mostly stagnant over the past few decades, according to a study from the Pew Research Center. And since 1999, incomes for more middle-class families specifically have actually shrunk in all but 2 states, another study found. At the same time, housing costs keep increasing. Still, there are some cities where incomes are rising faster than housing costs. To determine exactly where financial website Magnify Money used data from the U.S. Census Bureau to compare workers' incomes in the nation's 100 largest metros to the cost of housing in the same areas. Here are the top U.S. cities where incomes are outpacing housing. Malcolm,
Can I stop you for a second?
Absolutely.
And just say really quickly, we better start getting some retweets and some shout outs from Mr. Sean Carter, not to be confused with but
Not that
Sean
guy.
M. Carter of CNBC. With the amount of love that he gets on this show, like I looked down and I was like, Sean Carter again? So I'm just throwing that out there. I know, Sean, you listen to the show.
He must.
I need to start seeing some retweets and some shares and get some invites to parties in New York sponsored by CNBC.
something.
Or the love is gonna stop, sir.
Indeed, indeed.
Continuamos, por favor.
So on this list, number 10 is Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nope.
Number 9, Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, right. It got a little bit. Number 8, Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Nope.
Okay. 7, Boston, Massachusetts.
Nope.
Number 6, Denver, Colorado. Number 5, Portland, Oregon.
Nope.
And then number 4, Austin, Texas.
Nope.
Okay. Seattle, Washington was number 3.
It's possible.
Number 2, I think this is a good one, San Jose, California.
Sure.
And then number 1 is San Francisco, California, which
I
is,
don't think I can afford San Francisco.
I don't think anybody can afford San Francisco, even people living in San Francisco. So it's an interesting list. I mean, Malcolm sounds, if you're not familiar, that's his sound when he hears a city that he would never, ever decide to live in.
Not just a city, a whole state that there's no way you could pay me enough money to ever live in that state. Like Texas, for example.
Okay.
I hear Austin, Texas is beautiful. I hear Houston, Texas is great. My favorite football team happens to come from Dallas, Texas. But you couldn't pay me enough money in the world to live in the state of Texas for even 1 week. Never gonna get it. So, for people who are confused why I was like,
Making those sounds. So what
knocking down the city you might live in, for example.
of these cities, which one would you be most inclined, if you were in that position to move to based on what you know and based on housing costs being lower and income or salaries being higher?
Yeah, you hit it actually. San Jose, I think, is possible.
Okay.
And actually, San Jose, I mean, California is expensive, period.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
But just from an income going further standpoint, and people actually like being happy to see me walking down the street and moving into their neighborhood, San Jose, like, that seems doable.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't know what would be on my list. I'm going to exclude California because I'm from there. That's kind of like cheating. For some reason, I want to believe I could do Nashville just because I've seen like a classmate of mine in high school lives there and she looks like she's doing well with her family.
That's
or whatever.
always at the top of the list of cities where millennials are moving to in droves.
I want to believe I could do it, but you know, I do have my reservations.
Tennessee is Tennessee.
Tennessee indeed is Tennessee.
When you learn the honky tonk, then I'll know you're ready for Nashville, Tennessee.
Indeed, indeed. But more broadly speaking, should young people and like recent grads and people who are still in their like early 20s, should they be considering, you know, the cost of living versus the, I guess, salary, income, or possibility?
100%.
Okay.
I don't think people really put enough focus on
That.
things like that when you choose what school you're going to go to.
Absolutely.
Because realistically, I don't know what the percentage is, but I'd say a high percentage of people, their first job out of college is probably in the state that they went to college in.
Right.
So I think some credence should be paid to that.
Okay.
But then also, like, to take it a step further, the state that you live in with that new job paying that entry-level salary,
Right.
is that going to go very far in the city that you choose to take that new job in?
Right.
So if I'm taking a new job in New York City, for example, it's great. It sounds exciting, right? Like I'm
Right.
moving in New York City. If I can make it here, right? If I can make it here, Alicia Keys says I can make it anywhere, right?
I never
But
liked
then-
that song, but go ahead.
I actually really like that song.
I don't like it because the message is trying to portray, but go ahead.
I don't know what you have against New York, but I'm going to back away from
It's
that one.
expensive.
What does that have to do with the message?
The message is move to this expensive city to follow your dreams, when really it's really just go pay high rent and be broke for a long time.
Okay. fair
Anyways,
enough.
continue. I'm gonna get off that soapbox.
I can't find too much fault with that one.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Continue on.
So anyway, I just feel like if you think for a second and be a little more intentional about where that money you're making is gonna go.
Yeah.
And so maybe a company that's based in Atlanta somewhere is gonna pay you $48,000 as an entry-level salary.
Right.
And there's a company in DC that's gonna pay you $50,000 as an entry-level salary. You'll be able to afford a lot more life
Right.
in Atlanta,
Absolutely.
minus that $2,000.
Right.
But a lot of times people will think, oh, well, they're gonna pay me more, so I'm gonna
Right.
come there.
Right.
Well, you might not necessarily like what you find when you come here. So I would say Atlanta might be the choice.
And you can visit DC anytime you want to.
Right.
Another piece that we pulled for this show, this is an interesting one. Mark Benioff, we need a new capitalism. This is an October 2019 piece on the New York Times by Mark Benioff, who is the CEO or co-CEO of Salesforce. Capitalism, he says, I acknowledge has been good to me. Over the past 20 years, the company that I co-founded, Salesforce, has generated billions in profits and made me a very wealthy person. I have been fortunate to live a life beyond the wildest imaginations of my great-grandfather, who immigrated to San Francisco from Kiev in the late 1800s. Yet, as a capitalist, I believe it's time to say out loud that what we all know to be true: capitalism as we know it is dead. Malcolm, when I got to that line in particular, I think I had like some audible like gas or something, like something came out of my mouth that was like, oh, that this CEO of like a well-known, everyone's heard of Salesforce, I'm pretty sure. This person no doubt has millions in wealth to his name, is saying that capital
Billions with a B.
Indeed,
but-
billions. This prominent CEO is calling capitalism dead. Is this the strongest terms you've heard this whole conversation been put in?
Yes
thus
and
far?
no. So Benioff has actually been making these kind of statements for years.
Okay.
So it's surprising to hear somebody in his position say such a thing.
Right.
But it's also not surprising to hear him specifically say such a thing.
He has a track record for
He
that.
has a track, kind of like, I hate to say it, but kind of like Bernie Sanders in the sense that like 35, 40 years ago, he was showing up at local community activism meetings.
What was he saying?
Saying the exact same thing about too many billionaires 35, 40 years ago. Like legitimately, he was free college for everybody and all that back in the day. So it's hard to say like this dude suddenly showed up and just started saying what was popular.
Right.
Benioff kind of the same way, like he's been saying that along the way, but he'll also take the check if you write it. So it's a little bit tough to say like, okay, this guy who's got billions of dollars is on our side.
Right.
Because that's kind of how folks got voting for Trump, right? Assuming he was on your side, even though you aren't the same.
Right.
So that's where I have trouble with Benioff. Like,
Indeed.
it's a start,
Right,
but
for
I need
sure.
him to convince people who are a little more like me before I jump into that pool.
Absolutely. He went on to say, yes, free markets and society. He said, yes, free markets and the societies that cherish scientific research and innovation have pioneered new industries, discovered cures that have saved millions from disease, and unleashed prosperity that has lifted billions of people out of poverty. But capitalism, as it has been practiced in recent decades with its obsession on maximizing profits for shareholders, has also led to horrifying inequality. Globally, the 26 richest people in the world now have as much wealth as the poorest 3.8 billion people, and the relentless spewing of carbon emissions is pushing the planet toward catastrophic climate change. In the United States, income inequality has reached its highest level in the last 50 years, with the top 0.1% people like me owning roughly 20% of the wealth. While many Americans cannot afford to pay for a $400 emergency, it's no wonder that support for capitalism has dropped, especially among young people. To my fellow business leaders and billionaires, I say that we can no longer wash our hands of responsibility for what people do with our products. Yes, profits are important, but so is society. And if our quest for greater profits leaves our world worse off than before, all we will have taught our children is the power of greed, Malcolm. So what do you think of this piece and how strongly it speaks of the need for a new kind of capitalism?
So I don't disagree with him. I think there needs to be more and more people like him saying such a thing. Like Ray Dalio is another one. He's a Wall Street elite, quote unquote.
There's a trend of where I'm seeing, particularly on CNBC, where they always say, here's this millionaire, billionaire saying we need a new kind of capitalism.
But that person, I don't know any of the statistics behind this, right? This
Right.
is just my wild imagination. But I would be interested to see how much that person is doing with that wealth to benefit the people they're also saying, hey, those people are left out.
Right.
Like, for example, I mentioned this to you, my first ever trip to LA. I was very disheartened by how many homeless people there are in LA.
Yeah.
And it's not, to my assumption, because people are lazy and can't keep it together, and people have just literally been displaced.
Right.
Like, they've been priced out.
It's structural.
Things have moved so fast that they haven't been able to keep up.
Right.
And so now they're living on the street literally in hundreds and thousands everywhere all over the city.
Yeah.
San Francisco's no different.
Right.
So somebody like Salesforce, a company who's benefiting from being in that ecosystem in the state of California, could very easily single-handedly rid homelessness in the state of California, in the city of San Francisco, in the county of Los Angeles, something, right, to make a significant enough impact. But I don't see that happening.
Right.
So yes, it's great. You can talk about it, and you're kind of an outlier because you recognize that there's some kind of systematic shift that needs to happen, but you aren't doing anything that I can see, right? Again, my imagination, I'm just speculating, but I haven't heard it or seen it, and so it's tough for me to get fully behind it if you aren't really using this money you're saying you shouldn't have to do anything with it.
Speaking of which, what would it take for you to see these business leaders or people or personalities or whoever make a move, and what kind of move would it take for you to say, the business community specifically has made a change and knows there needs to be some adjustments that are made? What would it take for you to say, I think we're at that point?
Well, I just gave it to you. Like, I would like to see Mark Zuckerberg live stream on Facebook Live, right? He'll be the only person that actually uses that feature, on Facebook TV, handing over a check for $10 million, $50 million to pay off student debt of a graduating class of X school. Or handing over a check to build a shelter so that there's not people sleeping on the street in extreme climates in major metro areas all over this country.
Right.
Simple things like that make a significant enough impact the moment you do it.
Right.
That's what it would take for me to finally say, like, okay, like they mean what they say. They're not all bad guys.
Right.
Like Jeff Bezos, for example, Amazon has announced that they're taking away healthcare from all of their part-time employees. Jeff Bezos has enough money that if he paid each person who works for Amazon $250,000 as a bonus, he'd still be a billionaire. And Amazon has all the employees.
Right.
So it's just like, you can talk about it all you want to, but like simple things you can cut a check for would make a significant enough difference that I would shut up. I'd be like, oh, okay, well, he's
literally putting
I got nothing else to say.
Putting his money where his mouth is. Final question before we close this show. How could our American profit-driven society make a true shift in how we distribute monetary success? And I mean, is it policy? Is it culture? Like, what's the mix of things that we would need to actually see a shift from one kind of capitalism to another?
I think it's culture, and that culture drives policy. So you have extremists like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who want a Green New Deal that solves all of the world's problems with one stroke of the pen on one piece of legislation. I use the word extremist, and I mean it specifically in that case. Like, that's never going to happen in the way that she's proposed it or asked for it.
Right.
But then you also have people who are younger politicians who, like Andrew Yang, for example, who are saying more common sense things like, yes, we can pay for public education, but we can't expect the person who's getting the free public education to also get a Stanford education or a Harvard education. But we can pay for you to go to college.
Right.
Those things make sense, and to me that's a cultural shift to where enough folks who are in our age demographic or slightly older start to become those politicians saying those things on TV, where as a society, we go, yeah, I want some of that.
Okay.
I'll vote for that person.
All right. So it'll be a generational thing.
I think so.
Over time. Okay, absolutely. Well, I remind people you can always catch past episodes of Manage Your Damn Money on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and Spotify. Please leave us a review and a rating on any of those platforms. Give us a 5-star rating, please, so more people can watch our show. And of course, you can always send us your questions or your topic suggestions at info@manageyourdamnmoney.com. And of course, you can always catch us on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. My handle's at MYDM1. Malcolm, what's yours?
At Malcolm on
You
Money.
can always catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/manageyourdamnmoney. Of course, thanks to our partners here at Montgomery Community Media for their amazing hospitality. Another amazing show. Until next time, be good with your money.
Peace.
Peace.